Hello everyone, welcome back to Code with Beto. Super excited to be here back again with you guys with another video. And in today's video, we are going to learn how to integrate sign in with Google when we are using Firebase as a backend service. Okay, we are going to be using React Native Expo, and here we have the demo of what we're going to be doing. As you can see, this is going to work for iOS and Android. And if I press on the sign in with Google on the iOS device, you're gonna see that we have this modal, and on the Android we get redirect to another to the browser, and then we have the same screen basically. Okay, so I'm going to select my account on the iOS device, and as you can see, we are signed in automatically, no problem at all. And as you can see here, I'm using the same Google account, and when I press it, we get redirect back to the Android device. And if we wait a little bit, you're gonna see that we get redirect back to the home screen as well. Okay, and now I'm saving this session locally, and if I reload the application on Android, you're gonna see that we see a activity indicator for like half a second, and then we check that the user already signed it in, so we go back to the home screen. But we can go here to the settings screen and clear the local storage on both devices and reload the application again. So we don't have the user saved locally anymore. That's why we get redirect back to the sign in screen. Okay. And now to prove you guys that this works on Firebase, I'm going to bring my console here. And as you can see here, we have this user, which is the only one that I have. It's the same one because I'm using the same email in both devices, but I could use another account and I would get another user here. Okay. Okay, guys, so this is basically what we're gonna be doing. If you want to learn how to do this, make sure that you stick till the end, that you subscribe, and let's start. And before we start, guys, actually I want to mention that if you want to download the code for this project, you can go to codewithbeto.dev/project, and you're gonna find all the projects that we create in this YouTube channel. And I want to tell you as well that we're going to be using this React navigation application that we created in my last video. So if you want to create the navigation and the application that we are using, make sure that you check out my last video. And here you have all the instructions as well in Code with Beto, dependencies, and link if you want to download the code directly. Okay, so now that you know that, and of course you don't see this video here because I'm recording it right now. But as soon as I release it, it's going to be available in codewithbeto.dev. Okay, so now that being said, let's actually start creating this application. Okay guys, so here I have the application that we're gonna be using, and I already opening it on Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to start this project by well, before I actually start this project, I just want to mention that this is the project that we created in my last video, the navigation tutorial. So if you want to create this application, make sure you check out my last video, okay? And well, before I actually start this project, I need to install some dependencies that we are going to be using. So for that, I'm going to just copy here the Firebase package. So in order to install Firebase in your React Native application, you can just simply run the npx expo install Firebase, and let's wait a little bit, okay? We are gonna be using the expo auth session package as well. So after that, I'm going to run this command as well. And guys, if you want to just copy these dependencies, make sure you go to codewithbeto.dev. And in this project, I'm going to put all the dependencies that we're going to be using, and as well as instructions and how to set up your project. Okay, so let's install Expo Auth Session, Expo Crypto, and Expo Web Browser. Expo Crypto, it's a pair dependency of Expo Auth Session. We need that if we are going to be using Expo Auth Session. And Expo Web Browser, it's going to be basically the web browser that we are opening when we select this continue. This is the web browser that we are using, so that's why we need to install this Expo web browser. So I'm going to hit enter, and then we are going to need another per dependency that we need to use for Android, and this is going to be Expo application. So let's go ahead and install that one as well. And finally, because we want to test this application on a real life scenario, we need to make the builds, okay? And in order to make the builds, we're gonna be using Expo Dev Client. Expo Dev Client basically allows us to build the application and then run it like it were running on the production environment, but in our simulators. Okay, so let's install Expo Dev Client as well. And finally, the last dependency that we need, guys, is going to be async storage, because I want to save the user information whenever they sign in, so I don't have to, so the users don't have to sign in every time they reload the application. We can save the information locally and then retrieve it from the local storage. So let's go ahead and install this dependency as well. And I believe those dependencies are the ones that we need. Now we need to make some configurations before we actually can use these dependencies. So I'm going to clear my terminal, and we need to configure the metro-config.js file, because we are using a recent version of Firebase, the latest one. So we can, as you can see here, we don't have the metro.config.js file. That is because we are using Expo, but if we run this command npx customize metro-config.js and hit enter, you are going to see that we generate this metro-config.js file. And now we can simply substitute this with this, okay? Basically, we are saying we are configuring some things because in order to Firebase to work correctly with our application, okay? Now that you have done that, we actually going to need as well, we're gonna be using EAS. If you are not familiar with EAS, it's Expo Application Services. Basically, Expo builds your application on the cloud and then they give it to you so you can test it out and then you can put it on the app stores. So make sure that you have EAS installed, EAS. If you want to make sure that you have it, you can simply run npx install globally EAS CLI. Now I already have it, so I'm not going to run this command. But after you run this command, you can simply check or log in into your account. I already signed in into my account, and I believe I can say as well, if I run EAS, I'm going to get a lot of commands that we can use with EAS. As you can see here, we have this account command. And if I say now EAS account, hit enter, you are going to see that, okay, so we need to provide a command. So we can say account sign in or init, login, logout, open, and we can also say who am I. So let's run EAS who am I, hit enter, and as you can see, I'm already logged in into my account of Expo here in my CLI. Okay, so make sure that you are signed in, and then after that we need to configure some things because we're going to be creating our build using EAS. Of course, we can build the application as well locally, but just to show you how you can configure EAS, you can simply run the command EAS build configure and hit enter. And let's say yes here. Let's wait a little bit. Let's select all, and that's it. So the EAS file.json here was created. And if you go to this file, you're gonna see the configuration that you can change and customize as you need. So for example, whenever you are going to build your application with EAS, you can specify which build profile you want to use, for example, development, preview, or production. And you can make some configurations here depending on what you want to do, right? Okay, so now that we have that, we can actually start by creating our projects in the cloud. So we're going to be using Firebase, and as a requisite for that, you're going to need a Firebase account. So let's go to the Firebase account, and I'm going to bring here my Explorer. So you can see here, I have my Firebase account open. Let me put this like this and move it like this, make a little bit bigger, and that's it. So if you don't have an account on Firebase, go ahead and create one. I already have one, so I'm going to go to my console. And as you can see, I have one Acme project. Now, guys, we're going to need as well a Google Cloud account. I already have mine here open. And as you can see, I'm in the current project Acme, which is the same one that I created. Well, they have the same name, but they are different projects, okay? So let's start creating the Firebase project for this tutorial. I'm gonna hit on create project, and then I'm gonna say tutorial, tutorial sign in Google. You can name it as you want. Let's hit continue. And now you're gonna be asked if you want to enable analytics. We don't want that for now. Just hit create project, and this is going to create a project in your Firebase, okay? Now let's go to the Google Cloud website, and here we need to create a new project. If you have one already, you don't need to create one, but let's create a new one so you can see how you can do that if you don't know how to do it. Hit new project, and then this project is going to be tutorial sign in, like this, okay? Hit create, and this is going to start creating your project, as you can see there. So this is going to take a couple seconds. Let's go back to the, okay, and that was quick. Now we just created this tutorial sign in. We can select this project, okay? And just to make sure that you select it, you can check out here that says tutorial sign in. Now let's go back to Firebase, and the project is ready as well. So let's hit continue here. We are automatically redirect back to this project, and you can check here that we are in the sign in tutorial, okay? So now let's connect this backend to our React Native application, okay? So now we can hit here, we can click this settings button, then select project settings. Once you are in the project settings, you can scroll down here in general, all the way down, and we need to select this web icon. You're gonna be redirected to this page in which you can name the web application that you want to connect to this application, okay, to the React Native application. So the application that I want to connect to my backend is going to be my React Native app, okay, and you can name it as you want. This name doesn't matter too much. Register application, and this is going to give us the credentials that we need to provide in our React Native application in order to connect to this Firebase project or backend project, okay? Now you gotta make sure, guys, that you are careful and you don't expose these keys here. Of course, I'm going to delete this project, so I don't have to worry about that, but you can copy this. And then once you copy this, you can continue to console. Then I'm going to make this a little smaller. Okay, now let's go back to the React Native project. And in order to connect with the configuration that we just copied, I'm going to create a new file, which is going to be called firebase config.js. Okay, and inside this project, inside this file, I'm going to paste my configuration, and my configuration is going to look something like this. I'm going to start by deleting these comments that we don't need too much. Now, as you can see here, we are initializing the application automatically, so we don't have to do anything. These are my credentials. Maybe you want to use environment variables to hide this if you want to push this to GitHub, for example, or if you are going to share this code. Okay, and now that we are here, guys, I want to go ahead and import a method called getOut. And well, As you can see, I don't have autocomplete, but if we put here Firebase/auth, we can import from here getAuth, which is a method that basically connects to our authentication service in the Firebase cloud and provides us with all the methods and all the things that we need to authenticate users in our application. Okay, so to initialize this authentication, we can say auth equal to getAuth, which is this function up here. And this function, if I do hover here, you're gonna see that this takes an application of Firebase, right? And my application is right here. So I can just simply copy this and paste it here. This is all we need. And now we can reference this auth object and basically provide that in the functions that we can use with Firebase. So Firebase knows which service or which account of Firebase we are dealing with, okay? Now let's export this out because we are going to be using it in our application and hit save. Okay, this is all the configuration that we need. So let's close this for now and let's go back to the console. Now here I just created my project, so I can select this project overview, and I'm going to make this a little smaller. Okay, no, if I click here, you're gonna see that we have this sidebar that is hiding. But once you have this, you can start actually adding the authentication service. Okay, you can select here authentication, or if you prefer, you can scroll down a little bit here in the main application, in the main screen, and select authentication. Okay, it's going to be basically the same. And once you are in this screen, you just have to simply click here on Get Started. This is going to activate the authentication service for our Firebase account or Firebase project. And because for now we just want to have Google as a provider to authenticate users, we can select Google. Then we need to select Enable, and this is going to ask us for a support email. We need to provide a support email, so I'm going to select the one that I have here and click on Save. Okay, let's wait a little bit. Until this is done, we need to go back to the Google Cloud. But before we go, once this is enabled, you can click on this Edit Configuration. And once this is created, if you select here Web SDK Configuration, you're going to see this Web Client ID. And you can use this to add links or to connect to Google Cloud, to tell Google Cloud that this application is going to be dealing with our account to authenticate users, okay? And so you know what I'm saying here, I'm just going to copy this. Then I'm going to go back to my Google Cloud account. I'm already in my sign-in account, remember? So here I'm going to select this navigation menu. And from here, I'm going to select API and Services, Credentials, click on Credentials, and let's create a new credential. Now, we are gonna need a OAuth client ID for this project, but before we can do that, we need to set up a OAuth consent screen. This consent screen basically is going to be the screen that the user is going to see when they are trying to sign in into our application. Now I'm going to select the type that I want to create here. You can create an internal one or external. I'm going to select external and hit create. I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can see a little better. Now the name of my application is going to be as well tutorial sign in, just like that. Now we need to provide a support email as well. I'm going to select the only one that I have here. Scroll down, you can specify a logo, app domain. We don't need that because we don't have a domain for the application. You can just leave those blank, and you can select authorized domains as well, but we don't have anything at the moment. And finally, we need to provide a email, okay? Now this email is going to be my email that I'm using for now. So it's going to be code with beto.dev. codebeto@gmail.com. Okay, so codebeto.dev@gmail.dev. Save and continue. Save and continue. Okay. Now we are redirect to this step 2, which is scopes. You can manage the scopes and information that your application needs from Google here. But we are going to leave just the default values and save and continue. Now you can add test users. That it's a good idea if you want to be testing. So I'm going to add my account betomoedano01@gmail.com, which is the account that I'm going to be using to sign in from my simulators. Okay, so let's add this test account. It is here, as you can see, and now save and continue. Okay, this is the summary, which means we are all done. We can go back to the dashboard, and that's it. Our OAuth consent screen is set up. So we can go to the credentials, okay? And now in credentials, we're gonna need to create a credential for the iOS and one for the Android application. So the credential that we need is gonna be a OAuth client ID. Select this one here. And the application type, let's start with iOS, okay? iOS is going to ask us for the bundle ID of the application. If you don't have one, you can go to your application on React Native and simply pre-build this application. In order to pre-build this application, we can run the command npx expo pre-build. Now, just so you can see what this is going to do, if we open the app.json file, you are going to see that inside the iOS part, we don't have the bundle identifier at the moment, and inside the Android part, we don't have the package, okay? So once we do that, or once we run this command, we are going to generate those things that we need. Now Expo is asking us which package name we want to use. You can customize this as you want. So for example, I would customize this if this were an important application that I'm creating. I would say dev.codewithbeto.my application name. So for example, navigation test. But for now, I'm just going to select the default, which is going to be my username. So it's gonna end up being com.betomoedano.navigation test. Hit enter. And now for iOS bundle identifier, hit enter. So we're gonna have the same one for iOS and Android. Now, this command as well generated the iOS and Android folder locally in my project. So now we have the native projects inside our project ready to be built and ready to test. Got it? Okay, so now we have this bundle identifier. We can simply copy this and go back to the console, to the Google Cloud account, and select and tell basically Google Cloud that this application is going to be the one that is going to be using this service. Okay, now you can provide as well the App Store ID or team ID, but we don't have that now, so we can just simply select create. Okay, and now we get the first client ID that we need. Let's copy this. Let's go back here, and we need to save this somewhere. So for now, I'm going to select my Firebase config, and down here, I'm going to create a comment, say iOS equal to the ID that I just got. Okay, so I'm going to go back here, click OK, and now we need to create one for Android. And you can also create one if you are going to build this application for web. You can create one for web, but for now we're just going to be doing Android and iOS. So let's select Android this time, and now we're going to need the package name. Okay, so the package name is going to be the same one that we have here. So you can go to the app.json and copy this. Go back to the console, go back to the Google Cloud console and paste this here. Now we need the SHA-1 certificate fingerprint. This is a little bit tricky. This is why we need to use EAS. So I'm going to clear my terminal here. And what I'm going to do now Okay guys, so this is why we needed EAS. And for that, we can simply run EAS credentials platform Android. Okay, so hit enter. And now you need to select the profile that you want to use. You can select the one you want, but I'm going to select production for now because I want to make sure that this is going to run in production in the real world. So now here we can select key store and then set up a new key store. Hit enter if this is the first time that you are doing this. Then I'm going to hit enter again. Then we need to press yes. This is going to generate the key store. And now we can press any key to continue. This is going to give us what we need here. So I'm going to move this here and make this a little bit bigger so you can see. Okay, and I'm going to move this up here so you can see that we have the SHA1 that we need. So I'm going to copy this thing, this large number, and now I'm going to put this back. Okay, now we can paste that here and finally hit create. Okay, this is going to give us the client ID, copy, and then go back to the Firebase config. To finally simply quit this, we don't need this anymore, and we can clear the terminal and maybe close it for now. Okay, now we can create another for Android and paste it here. Okay, now these IDs are the ones that we need in order to integrate the sign-in with Google. But there's another important thing that we need to do. Okay, so let's select this web client ID in the Firebase console. And here I'm going to go to my, well, and I'm going to zoom here a little bit. Well, I cannot zoom here on the link. But what I want to do here is basically on google.com API/credentials. Then I'm going to say /OAuth client, and then /. Okay, and if you don't want to put OAuth client, what you can do is simply hit create OAuth client ID, and then just delete this client ID / and here you need to paste this web client ID. Okay, so come back, paste it here, and hit enter. This is going to take us to the configuration that we need to add in order to connect this Google Cloud with the Firebase account. Okay, so as you can see here, you're gonna get this auto-created Google service web client. And now you have here the link authorized to be the origin for JavaScript applications, and then the authorized redirect URL, which is gonna be the Firebase, basically the Firebase URL. Okay, so this is mine. This is my application, personal application. You need to copy this web client ID and paste it like I did. So you're gonna get this generated like this. Okay, so now we can hit save. And now this basically connected the Firebase with Google Cloud, but now we need to connect the client IDs with Firebase, okay? Because we are going to be saving the users here, right? So now if I select these safest client IDs from external projects, here it's where we need to specify the client ID for iOS. So I'm going to paste this. So basically we're saying that we give permissions to the iOS application, and we want to give permissions as well to the Android application. So let's copy the client ID for Android, go back here and paste it and hit add. Okay, now we have these two applications that can use this client, that are authorized to do stuff with Firebase. Okay, so now let's hit save. And now guys, this is all the configuration that we need to do in order to start implementing this on the React Native application. Okay, Now, okay guys, so now let's actually start the implementation. And now that we installed all the things that we needed, we can pre-build the application by running the command npx expo pre-build. Pre-build, it's going to generate the iOS folder and Android folder so we can make the build locally. But you can use EAS service of Expo if you want to build the application with them on the cloud. In this video, we are going to do it locally. So now, once you run this command, you're gonna have this Android and iOS folder. And now we can run it on iOS to start. So I'm gonna say yarn iOS. I switched from npm to yarn. So that's why I run yarn iOS, and this is basically going to run npx export run semicolon iOS, okay? Once this is done, this should be build the application on the simulator, as you can see here. So it's loading, and there we have our application, okay? Now, if you want to learn how to create this application and all the navigation that we have here, make sure you check out my last video. And if you want to learn more than that, make sure that you go to codewithbeto.dev and check out my React Native course, okay? Nice. So now that we have these guys, we can actually start implementing all the logic of the authentication. Now, before I do that, I'm going to make the build for Android as well. So I'm gonna say yarn Android. And this is the same as saying if you are using npm, you can say npx expo run Android. Oops, Android, like this. And this is going to create the build for Android, okay? And it's going to install it in your Android emulator. Now let's actually just close the configuration that I have here for now. And I went ahead and create this sign in screen.js. This is going to be a fairly simple UI just to display the button that we're going to be using. So I'm going to say np export default function, and the name is going to be sign in screen. Okay, let's return for now a safe area view, or we can return just a normal view from React Native. I'm going to create a text that says sign in with Google. Now I imported from React Native Web, but we need this from React Native. Now my build is ready, by the way. So I'm going to reload this. So this should be now load the application that we are running. Okay, and there we have it. So the application is working on iOS and Android. And by the way, this application is compatible with dark mode. I'm going to reload my application here on the right. And if I change to dark mode, you're gonna see that this is going to work as well. But this is not the topic for this video. Now that we have this running on Android, I'm going to move this away and actually start creating my UI, right? So for this, I'm going to basically just copy a component that I have here already. Now, don't pay attention too much to this component. It's just the UI. As you can see here, we have just this text, and for each letter of Google, I'm giving it a color. Of course, I don't think this is the best way to do this, but I wanted to hurry up. Now, I'm passing this prompt async function as a property to this screen, and you're gonna see why in a moment. But now if I hit save, we can actually use now this sign in screen. I'm gonna go to my app.js, which is the entry point of my application. And for now, just to see what we have, I'm going to return my sign in screen. Okay, hit save, and this is how it looks. Okay. And as you can see, this is working as well on Android. But now guys, one important thing that I forgot to mention is that in order to redirect back to the application to work correctly, we need to specify a scheme into the app.json file. So I'm going to go ahead and double check that I don't have already a scheme. And as you can see, I don't have it. So I'm going to say here scheme. scheme like this. And this is going to be a string that identifies your application. Now I'm going to use this log. I recommend that you use this log as well. And I'm going to paste it, but you can change it as well as you for something that you want. Now, because we added that, we need to pre-build again the application. So I'm gonna say npx expo pre-build. This is to make sure that the changes of this app.json file are going to apply to the application. Okay, so now let's run this on Android. Let's wait a little bit. And we can actually test if that is working by trying to navigate to this link from Safari. So I'm going to wait a little bit until this is done. Okay, and it's running right there. Cool. So now, okay, so we have this application. And if I go to my Safari here and delete this and paste the scheme that we defined. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete this and paste my scheme that we defined and put a colon / hit enter. And this is going to ask us to open navigation test, which means that the deep link navigation is working. Now, whenever we try to open this is going to open the application, okay? So this is a cool way to test that the scheme is working. Okay, now we can close this, and now we know that this is working, so we can actually start applying the logic. Okay guys, now to manage the authentication of the application, I recommend that you do this in a higher order component, which is the application in this example. It's the app.js file. This is going to allow us to basically just check the authentication state before we render anything to the user. Okay, so I don't know what I'm doing here, but let's actually start by importing some things that we're gonna need in order to implement this. Remember that we are using Expo Auth Session. So Expo Auth Session comes with a provider, Google, and we can access all the methods for Google here. So let's import that. We are going to need as well to import the web browser window. So I'm gonna say import all as web browser from Expo web browser. Remember that we installed this at the beginning. Okay, now apart from this, well, we're gonna need to initialize this web browser right away. So I'm gonna call the maybe complete auth session. This is basically going to capture when the user wants to sign in. And instead of taking the user out to Safari, for example, we are going to open the modal screen and display the web browser inside the application. Got it? Okay. Now, after this, we are going to need to import some things from Firebase. We are going to need to import Google Auth Provider and OAuth state change, sign in with credentials, sorry. So these methods from Firebase allows us to sign in a user with a provider. In this case, it's going to be Google. Now, the OAuth state change is a function that is going to help us to listen to auth events from the user, okay? And this is going to be like a trigger that is going to basically run a function whenever the user signs in or whenever the user creates an account or something happens in the authentication flow. This on auth state change function, it's going to run. And we are going to see how we can use that in a moment. Now, if you remember, we have this Firebase configuration here, and we need to reference this auth object that we have here. So we actually know, so all these functions know to which developer this application belongs, okay? So let's import auth from the configuration, so you can see here. And I believe this is all we need for now, but I'm gonna go ahead and import as well async storage because we want to save the information that we are going to be retrieving. So let's import that. We are importing as well the sign in screen up here. And I believe this is all we need for now. Okay. Now let's actually start integrating the logic that we're going to be using. So I'm going to be using the, I'm going to be using state from React. So I'm going to import use state like this, but I'm going to be needing React. So I'm going to import all as React from React. Okay. So now we can reference, react, and abstract all the functions that we need, okay? So we're gonna be using state to manage or to save the information of the user. So I'm gonna call this user info and set user info. Okay, now we're gonna be using a hook that comes with authentication with the Google object here. So this hook is going to look something like this. It's going to, we're gonna say google.useAuthRequest, and this hook basically is going to load the authorization request and returns the loaded request. Okay, so the things that this hook returns, we are going to get them here. So I'm gonna say requests like this, then response, and finally we get a prompt async function. This prompt async function, it's the one that starts the signing process. Okay, now important, we need to specify the application's client ID. So let's start with iOS, and then if I just put a empty string for now, we can specify the Android as well. And if you remember, we pasted this here. So let's copy the iOS super quickly. Going back here and copy the Android one. Okay. Now guys, make sure that you don't share this with anyone again. And there we go. So we have now the request, the response, and the function prompt async. So the prompt async, we can use it like this. I'm passing this prompt async to my sign-in screen, and I'm just calling it like this. Now, the reason why we are calling this function like this, it's because we want to make sure that this function is only called when the user presses this touchable opacity, which is the sign in with Google button. So let's call it like that. Make sure that you call it like that, because you can also call it like this, but this is not going to work correctly. So make sure that you call it like this. Now, I'm going to close my sign in screen because we don't need it anymore. I'm going to close my Firebase config as well. And now we can actually set up a useEffect hook to listen whenever the response changes. Okay guys, so down here, I'm gonna say react.useEffect. UseEffect is going to take two parameters. The first one is going to be a callback function, and the second one is going to be an array of dependencies in which we can include the variables or dependencies that we can use, that we want to be checking. And whenever these dependencies change, we want to run the functionality that is inside this function. Now the dependency that we need here is going to be the response that we are retrieving from the useAuth hook. Okay, now we can check here if the response dot type it's equal to success. And as you can see here, we have these methods. So I would recommend that you handle every single one as you prefer or following the best practices. So for now, we're gonna check just if the type is success. What we want to do is abstract some things that we're going to get from the response params, okay? And the thing that we need here is going to be the ID token from the user. Now we can use this token to generate a credential and then authenticate this user. Okay, so I'm gonna say credential equal to, and here we're gonna be using the Google Auth provider that we are importing from Firebase. So I'm gonna say credential, and then to create this credential, we need to pass the ID token. Okay, once we have this credential, we can actually authenticate the user by calling the function sign in with credential. Okay, and we are going to pass, well, and if you pay attention here, when I open the parentheses, this function is going to take the instance of the authentication of our configuration of Firebase and then the credential. So let's pass this out that we're importing from the configuration. So let's say here out, and then we need to pass the credential, okay, which is this credential that we're generating with the Google Auth provider. Perfect. So now this is going to mean that the user is going to be saved into our Firebase cloud. Okay, so now let's hit save. And I believe that this should be working now. So I'm going to try to press this sign in. Of course, it's not going to happen because I'm not passing the prompt async as property in this screen. Remember that we are passing it. Okay, so hit save. And now let's try it. Sign in, continue. Okay, and this is working, as you can see, guys, at this point. So let's select my account. And that's it. Now, let's go to Chrome and let's check here if we have some users. Okay, and we have this user. Now, we have the user. We did everything correctly, but we still in this screen, okay? Now, I'm going to teach you as well how you can handle this authentication. And in order to do that, we're gonna be using the onAuth state change from Firebase, like I mentioned before. It's this method that we are importing here. Okay, so let's use another use effect for that. Use effect, remember this is going to take 2 parameters. And this use effect is just going to run once because this use effect is going to set up the listener. So in order to do that, we need to create a subscription, and the convention to do that is to call the subscription unsubscribe. So I'm gonna say unsub. This is short for unsubscribe, and I'm going to call my method onAuth state change. As you can see, this is going to take my auth, and then it's going to take a callback function, which is going to return the user, as you can see here. Now, here is the point where we can grab the information of the user and create a user in our database, or just simply save the user locally in this case. So let's say async. We are going to grab the user in this function, and now we can simply validate if we have a user. We can do something. Otherwise, we can say console log else. Okay, so you can handle the state whenever the user is not authenticated. Okay, now let's check if the user exists, which means we can actually put this user on the console by saying console log user. Now this is going to print a object super ugly. In order to make this a little bit readable for us, we can put it in a JSON stringify and then pass null as a second parameter and give 2 as space. If I hit save now, you are going to see that in my terminal, because I sign in, I have this information, okay? And this is the information of the user. Now, as you can see here, we have the ID, the email. My email is verified. My display name is betomoedano. Is anonymous equal to false. We can grab the photo. As you can see here, this is my avatar photo. And we also have this important information that is going to help us to authenticate the user. So here we have the secret token manager object. Inside this secret token manager, you're gonna find the refresh token as well as the access token. And down here, you don't see it because my face is in the way. But if I put this here, you're gonna see that we have this expiration time. Now, this is out of the scope of this tutorial, but I would recommend that if you have an important application, that you check this expiration time, and whenever this token expires, you get a new one, okay? Or you authenticate the user again. Now, let's put this down here again, and I'm going to, actually I could do that. Okay, Got it. So now we have this information. And as soon as we get this information, what we can do is call the set user info, which is this setter that we created here using use state. So we're going to grab the user info here. Got it? So let's put the user and that's it. Cool. So now we need to actually remove this whenever this component is unmounted. So the way we do that with the use effect is with the cleanup function that it's called whenever the component is unmount. So we are going to call unsubscribe, which is on sub like this. Okay. So this is for performance. Make sure that you add it. And now we can actually start validating what we are going to show on screen, depending if we have a user or not. And the way we do that is just simply saying that if we have a user, well, actually I can do it like this. If user, then navigation, which is all my application logic. Otherwise, just print the sign-in screen, and this is extra. Okay, now let's see if this works. Okay, user does not exist because it's user info. Actually, this is my state variable that I have here. Okay, hit save. And now because we have a user, we are signed in. That is amazing, huh? Now let's go actually to the settings here and add a button to sign out the user. Okay, so let's go to the settings folder, settings file, and create a button. And you're gonna be surprised how easy it is to sign out the user. I'm going to give it a title, which is going to be sign out. And then whenever the user presses this button, we are going to call an async function. And this function is going to await for the sign out method of Firebase. Hit save. Now if I press sign out, okay, we have some error down here. Let's check it out. Okay, sign out, it's giving me an error, and that is because I didn't pass my auth. Remember, always check that you are passing all the parameters. So let's import auth from the Firebase configuration. Hit save, and now let's try this again. Now in the state, nothing is happening because we are not handling anything here. So the application doesn't know that we don't have a user anymore. But if I reload this application, you're gonna see that the user is not authenticated, and we are entering into the else statement that we have in the app.js file here. Okay, so when the user is not authenticated, you can basically do whatever you want. But in this case, we can say user is not authenticated. Hit save. And now, as you can see, the user is not authenticated. Now let's sign in with Google again, continue. Remember that this is going to trigger this, this signing with credential, and as well, it's going to trigger this listener on auth state change because the auth state is going to change literally. So we are going to set the user, and then this validation is going to change. Okay, so that's why we're going to be rendering the navigation. Okay, let's hit save. Let's hit on the user, and it's working. Now, if I reload the application, you're gonna see that we are going back to the sign-in screen. The reason for that is because we are not saving the user locally, we are not saving the session, and the way we can do that is using async storage. So one way to do that is here, right after we get the user, we can actually call await and then call async storage, which is the dependency that we installed earlier to save information in the device. Of course, I would recommend that you encrypt this data, or I don't know, try to do it in a safer way, because the user could actually hack the device and access this information, which contains the token, and at the end of the day is the information of the user. Well, Now that you know that, we can actually call async storage dot set item, and now we need to provide a key. It's a good convention to put at or this symbol at the beginning of the string or the name that you want to save. In this case is the user, and now we can pass the actual information. Now we can pass the user, but remember this user is going to be a huge object, and async storage it's only capable to save strings. So that's why we need to say JSON stringify here and close it like this. Hit save. Now, whenever we authenticate the user, we are going to save the information here. Now, whenever we load the application, we need now to check if we have a user locally. And if we have a user locally, we can go ahead and put the navigation screens, right? So let's create a function up here. This function is going to be an async function. So I'm going to say const check local user. You can name this function as you want. This is going to be an async function, and it's going to just basically do a try catch. So I'm going to say try catch. In the case we have an error, we can actually put an alert that says error.message, maybe message like this. And what we want to try to do is say await async storage.get item. Now we want to get the user, and remember that the key was at user. Okay, so this is going to return us the information, but in JSON format. So I'm going to say user JSON equal to this. Now we can simply say const data equal to, and it could be user data equal to, and here we want to check if we actually have something locally, and we can basically say JSON. If we have something, we want to parse this JSON so we can use it in JavaScript. So I'm going to say JSON.parse user JSON. Otherwise, we want to return null. And finally, we can save this into the state by saying set user info and pass the user data. Now, at this point, this user data can be null or can have actually the information of the user, and we're going to set this here. So when this happens, we are going to trigger again this validation, and we are going to render whatever we need to render. Now in this case, of course, we could say console log local storage, and then we can put the user data so we can actually see what we have locally, and hit save. And let's try to, actually we're not calling this function anywhere. Now we can call this function right before we start the subscription. So let's call it here. I'm going to copy check local user and hit save. And as you can see down here, local user, it's equal to null. Perfect. Now let's try to sign in. Continue. This should save the user information locally. Okay. Now whenever we try to sign in again, whenever we reload the application, you're gonna see that we see the sign in screen for a moment, and then we check the local state, and this switches, right? Now, if I check my logs here, you're gonna see that local storage is equal to all this object here, this huge object, in which we can abstract the information of the user, right? So you can see here the email and all that. Got it. So one thing that I don't like here is that whenever I reload the application, we see the sign-in screen, and then we are suddenly changed to the home screen. Now we can easily fix that by creating a loading variable using state. So we can actually duplicate this user info and create a function, and create a variable called loading and set loading. Okay, this is going to help us to keep track of whenever we are loading the user for the first time. So we can call this function in the check here. So I'm gonna say set loading equal to true. And then we can add a finally here. So finally, I'm gonna say set loading equal to false. And the reason I do this on the finally, it's because this finally, it's going to run no matter what. So if we find the user, we are going to hit the finally. And if we got an error, we are going to hit the finally after the error. So we don't get stuck in the loading equal to true forever. Okay, so now basically we can just add an extra validation here and say if loading, return a loading screen. But we don't have a loading screen for now, so we can use a simple view from React Native. So let's import from types, I guess, and then put a text. Or actually, we can just put an activity indicator. And this activity indicator is going to be from React Native, and size it's going to be large. So hit save, and now I need to change this import because it's wrong. This is going to be just React Native, hit save. Okay, so I think this is working. Now we are not going to see this because we need to center this on the screen. I'm going to add a style super quickly. So let's do a flex of 1, align items center, center, and then justify content center. This is going to center everything. Now something is wrong here. I don't know why. Okay, so yeah, this is wrong. Center. Hit save, reload the application. Okay, and that was quick, but I hope that you see that the loading indicator was there. So let's reload. We are checking. We find out that we have the user locally. So we grab the user locally. Now, I just want to add, guys, that here, sorry, not here. Here, whenever we checked if we have a user locally, I would recommend that you check the expiration token and compare it to the now date. So you could basically just grab the number of seconds in which the token expires and then compare it to a new date like this. And I think you can get the time or get the seconds of the moment and compare it directly. So I think you can say get date or get time. Yeah, get time. And this is going to return the milliseconds, so you can compare it directly. But yeah, this is going to be out of the scope of this tutorial. But basically, this is what I wanted to show you guys. Of course, this is going to work as well with the Android device, and I'm going to bring it here so you can check it out for yourself. Let's see it. Okay. So this application request is invalid. Okay, and the reason for this, guys, I believe is because we need to make the build using Expo EAS, because we are using, remember that we got the SHI key, and the demo that I show you, I created, oh, never mind, this is working here. Okay, so I just needed to reload the application. I'm going to select my profile, and as you can see, this is working on Android perfectly without any problems. I'm going to reload, and there we have it. And well, guys, that's it for this video. I hope you liked this video. I hope you learned something new. I hope you go to codeWithBeto.dev and buy my React Native course. As well, check out the resources that we have there. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to give it a like, subscribe, and that's it for now. Bye.